Hey guys, this is going to be another video for the pilots and other aviation related people. Everyone else can probably move on, watch another video because they probably won't find it interesting. There's just been two things recently that have arisen that I thought the pilots and aviation people might be interested in. One is the preparation for radio test. So I managed to find a whole bunch of paper that you'll be looking at somewhere on the screen here now, probably over there I guess. Copies of previous tests, so it's all legitimate. We're allowed to have copies of previous tests to get the idea of the format and a bit of an idea of what the questions are going to be about. As you're probably seeing, there's a lot of kanji there, a lot of Japanese. It's all Japanese, of course, but the kanji is actually very specific to radio stuff and radio licensing stuff, and also to electronics. So there's been a few kanjis on there that I've shown to my friends and said, "What's this one?" And they, "I don't know." So a lot of them are like that because it's all it's sort of like if you show a scientific paper about electronics to somebody who hasn't studied it, there'll be words on there they don't know, and it's the same with the kanji. So there's lots of kanji on there that my Japanese friends don't know either. So quite a lot of study to be done there, a lot of preparation, and again, yeah, the chances of passing it are pretty remote for someone who's not Japanese. It's going to be pretty difficult, but we'll give it a shot and see how we go. But it's an unusual thing. Again, we've talked about the radio license before. You know, the language for pilots, the language for pilots using radio is English. So, you know, to have the test in Japanese is sort of interesting. There's a few different parts to it. One part is actually listening to English, listening to phonetics and writing down the letters, which would be easy. The rest of it's electronic. One section's electronics, which, you know, as pilots know, we're not allowed to touch the electronic part of the radios anyway. We're only allowed to operate the radio. We're not allowed to actually alter any of it. So knowing about the antennas and the electronics of it is irrelevant to us because you need to be a licensed aircraft mechanical engineer to do that anyway, which pilots are not. So it's sort of, again, it's all pretty pointless. Even the Japanese pilots all agree that the whole radio test is pretty pointless. There's no real practical application to it, but anyway, that's just the way it is. So by now you've probably seen some of the paper. I've shown you a fair bit of it now, so we'll move on to something else. We'll all agree it's horrific, shall we? Yes, it's horrific. Thumbs up the video if you think the Japanese radio pilot exam is horrific. The other thing that was sort of interesting was received an email via the aircraft operator at the local airport, and they've requested now, in English it'd be something like voluntarily refrain from flying would be the English translation. The Prefecture Board of Education and a couple of other prefecture boards of education sent emails to a whole heap of airports and asked them to ask aircraft operators to refrain from flying at certain times and on certain days in January and in February and March. The reason is that at various times and dates in February and March, different schools around different prefectures will be having English listening tests. So the English listening tests at schools here aren't that complex, but they've actually sent out the schedules to all the different airports, and they've been passed on to all the different aircraft operators, and the schedules show us what times, at what days, what schools are having English listening tests, and they've asked us to voluntarily refrain from flying at those times on those dates. So what they're trying to avoid is the kids are sitting in the classroom listening to some CD, this is what the test usually is. They sit and listen to a CD and have to answer questions write down stuff or answer questions. I've never actually seen one, but apparently that's what they're about. And so what they don't want is an aeroplane flying past while that's happening. So, voluntarily refrain from flying. So obviously the big RPT, regular public transport aircraft, the airline type aircraft, obviously they'll be still flying, and police helicopters and that sort of thing, Dr. Heli and all those guys. But the idea is that if we can avoid it, so I guess it will work. It will work. I know the people I'm involved with at the airport, they're cooperating. They've put that roster from the Board of Education into their roster for the aircraft, use of the aircraft, and as red. So in red colour. So the idea is that if people want to use the aircraft on that day, that they'll try and avoid using it during that time that we've been asked not to use it. It'll work. I can imagine if you tried it in Australia, I can't imagine it working. If someone likes to go flying at 9 o'clock in the morning and you told them there was a listening test on at the local school and please voluntarily refrain from flying, I don't think there's many that would. I think most of them would just roar off in the aeroplane, Neighbourly flying, it's called, isn't it, in most countries. We have neighbourly flying policies, but I don't think anybody would have heard of this one before, have you, in another country other than Japan? Usually it's something like hospitals, please avoid flying in this area because of a hospital, or please avoid flying in this area, but that's a permanent situation, isn't it? Or please enter the airfield from over the ocean rather than from over the city, and things like that, neighbourly flying. But yeah, please avoid flying the aeroplane at this time on this day, because some kid's having a listening test for English. I should send them an email and ask them to please refrain from flying on the days where I'm having a sleep in. They often fly helicopters over my house. Anyway, I thought the pilots might find those two things interesting. The horrific radio exam. I can't see a person, some Australian dude passing that. We'll see what happens. And yeah, please voluntarily refrain from flying. Isn't that a classic? So anyway, just a little one. Thought the pilots might find it interesting. More videos coming soon.